In the 90s, Playmates Toys made the deepest line of Star Trek action figures in history. My name's Keith, and I'm a collector working towards owning all 284. I've been a Trek fan for almost 35 years, and most people are sick of me talking about it. But somehow I've convinced my old friend Mike to review them with me on Look at My Star Trek Toys! What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Look at My Star Trek Toys. Boy, we have a fun one today, at least fun for me, because I get really excited about the little details and variations and the rocky beginnings, the birth of what became the legendary show, Star Trek: The Next Generation. Today we are going to talk about the Season 1 and 2 uniforms and figures based on them. Mike, how excited are you for this?
I'm excited and interested and curious, Keith, and I'll tell you why. I think I've said before, of all of the Treks, this is the one I'm most familiar with. I love to watch me some old shows, The Quantum Leap, often on BBC America. Next Gen is on in the background. It's what I fall asleep to, so I have a love of these characters, maybe not the in-depth knowledge of their lore, but a love for the characters. My curiosity stems from, we've seen these characters ad nauseum in your collection, Keith. I'm interested to talk about and learn the differences and the reason why we're highlighting them this week.
Yeah, well, there are a lot of tiny little details in these figures, which I find fascinating, but I think we should start with our backgrounds here. Speaking of tiny little changes and tiny little details stuff. Now, do you know why your Enterprise D bridge behind us, is less appropriate for this episode than mine?
My guess is probably that the ship was destroyed and they redid it or something, and I've got a later version. I think this is a computer-generated one, actually, from a game or whatnot. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I believe it is, and you are exactly half right. This is not the Enterprise E bridge after the D was destroyed in Generations. But this, what you have behind you there, is the remodeled, upgraded bridge for Star Trek Generations, which was tough because and I think I mentioned it on the Generations episode, that they started filming Star Trek Generations like a couple of weeks after they wrapped Next Gen. So they immediately had to get to work on the slight remodel and slight redesign of the Enterprise D bridge. You'll see steps leading up to the Picard's chairs there, and they also added little seats on the on stage right and stage left of the set there. So that is not the bridge that we are accustomed to on the show itself. That's the one that's behind me. So this episode's going to be a lot about little changes, little tweaks, little details, improvements as we went along, as well as some characters that didn't survive into what became classic Next Generation.
Cool.
So let us dive right in and start talking about some of these figures that represented Season 1 and 2 of Star Trek: The Next Generation. And let us start with the one person, main cast member, left out of Series 1 of the Next Gen figures for reasons I don't quite understand, but let's go straight to 6019, Dr. Crusher. So here we are. This is our first Dr. Crusher in the TNG era figure that we have covered. We did her Generations figure, but we haven't done her standard Next Gen figure. And so this one is Dr. Crusher with her medical coat, which she wore sometimes, and she didn't wear other times, but it happened all the way back in Season 1. Of course, this is the legendary Gates McFadden here, who, interestingly, Mike, I don't know if you know this, but she was with us for Season 1 of Next Generation, and then she was fired. Basically, for the most 1980s of reasons, according to the lore, she was fired for having opinions while being female.
Yes. Terrible choice.
Way to go. She will come back in season 3, and we will talk about who replaced her later in either this episode or next episode.
Oh,
next
actually,
episode.
that fascinates me, Keith, because I was gonna ask you, because I recall her being quite in the show quite a lot. I guess when you don't watch as chronologically as most, you don't recognize that she missed a whole season. But that's nuts that she left and then came back.
Well, she came back because people were pissed. They missed, Dr. Crusher. And of course, her character arc as being Wesley's mom, Wesley was a major character early in the series. And just deleting her was awkward. And people weren't necessarily fans of her replacement, who we will get back to later. A couple of other interesting things about Gates before we discuss the figure. Did you know that Gates McFadden is a dancer and choreographer? And I think we might have mentioned she dances with Data in the episode Data's Day and does a fair amount of that. But she had an extensive career before that. And she was the director of choreography and puppet movement as Cheryl McFadden for The Labyrinth.
Wow, I did not know that.
She choreographed The Labyrinth, people. Dance Magic Dance. How cool is that?
That's very cool.
So cool. All right, well then let's talk about her figure. What their action figure. What do you think here?
It's cool. It's interesting. Now, far be it from me, I'm not a fashionista, but I think that the juxtaposition of her blue coat there with the green uniform, green uniform.
It's sort of a tealish sort of a deal, yeah.
Yes, but anyhow, it's generally, I would say those two things clash, but it's kind of a cool mix here. So cool figure. She's got her pips. I'm sure you'll tell us about the pip situation. And I wish the jacket was removable. I love a removable piece, but unfortunately, budget told us we can't do it.
Well, and also I'm going to lose that. I don't want to lose the stuff.
Yeah.
So I will, I'll speak about the pips a little bit because this figure I'm using as a season 1, season 2 figure, but it's actually kind of hard to tell because the way you differentiate the early uniforms and the late ones were, one, it was a jumpsuit, and two, it had a stripe along the shoulders, which are blocked out here, as well as a larger collar. And so this figure, it looks like it has the later collar. So it's a bit of a cheat to say that this is a season 1, but they didn't make one for Dr. Crusher. And I'm just assuming that underneath the molded plastic coat can be the stripe or not stripe, based on how you would like to play with it.
What's important is the stripe in your heart.
The stripe in your heart. So before we move on, let's take a look at the box and take a look. We got some great feedback on the YouTube saying, hey, it's not really a complete review unless you show us the box. And because I don't have all of the boxes, I've sort of only shown the ones that I have. But, thanks to our good friends at Wixaban, who may not be our friends. They may not want us doing this, but we'll see if we hear from them. But here is the box, and this is from the Next Gen Series 2. Here with her card and her choking hazards, which appear to have a sticker on it, have a little bit more detail. Yeah, cool. Tell me any thoughts about the box here?
You know me, I love to take a peek. I love, as a kid, I think we talked about this before. You're eating your cereal, you get a new toy. You don't just want to. I wasn't a rip it out of the box kind of guy. I want the feeling. I want to read every little nook and cranny. I want to. I think if I was a kid now, I would have just kept them in the box because it's not even the playing with that. Well, I guess I did as well.
So if you were a kid now, you'd be an adult, I believe is what you're saying.
Interesting quandary you brought up. Regardless, I enjoy it. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, no, I think it's cool, and you can see on the box there it has the style of the Series 1 with the more cartoony Enterprise, But it does have the new sticker to say, hey, look, it's a series 2. But they haven't gone to the more realistic box, which I liked later. This still feels like it is generally aimed at kids, as opposed to
you know what my favorite
adults.
thing about the box is, to be honest with you here? Hold on, let me see if I can... We're doing it live!
Do it live!
As we pan around. I'm going to show you right here. It's at the very bottom, and it says ages 4 and up.
And up. That is a very general range. So certainly, I know it's 4 to 41. So we'll see.
Yeah,
sure,
I was just going to say,
well
I was like, we count. We've been accounted for.
We are in the target audience of this toy. All right. Well, let us continue to another interesting figure, but this one is specifically modeled as a season 1 figure. It's weird we didn't start with him, but we're going to go to our fearless leader, figure 6071, Captain Jean-Luc Picard. Let's have him beam in.
Where's the sound?
No sound. He's going to beam in very quietly. Okay, so here we are with our Picard in the season 1. Now you can see from the picture there, and we talked about it a little bit with the series 1 figures, that they'd moved on from these outfits, but this was a full form-fitting jumpsuit, so you couldn't be on Star Trek unless you kept it tight, because that uniform was up in your business. I would look like an inflatable tent, half inflated, in that uniform. So you'll notice, obviously, it's more form-fitting, but the main details are, the lack of collar. The later uniforms had a bit more of a collar there, and the pips were moved from the sort of shoulder area there to the collar, and they removed that extra stripe along the way. And you can also see in this early episode, this is actually season 2, so I guess this is what the final design was, that they do have a zipper down the front.
That's actually hidden, that zipper. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a huge part of the design. But you know what I'm noticing here? If you look at the way his left shoulder comes into the socket, I know it's harder for you to see on your end. There's definitely an outline of a small pad, as if there are definitely shoulder pads at the top here.
Oh, yes. No, they all had shoulder pads. Oh, no, for sure. You're not on Star Trek without shoulder pads.
It's subtle, though. It's not like a designing women type of situation. It's a subtle.
Well, it was the 80s. Oh yeah, no, they definitely had shoulder pads. But hey, that's it looked good. It's one of the features that makes Star Trek look like Star Trek. Now, before we continue on with this figure, you'll note. Speaking of Star Trek being Star Trek, he's wearing his weird bell-bottom pants.
Yes.
Which we saw from the Series 1 figure with his cardigan. However, which obviously they are reusing his legs from the previous
but it's not
mold.
just that. There's also there's a texturing almost on the bottom of the pants in the back here. See?
Yeah.
Or is that writing? Oh, it's writing. It looks like
that is the that's the little copyright thing that we talked about. If they couldn't fit it on his feet, they put it on his legs. You know what? If you go to Toy Cam, we can actually take a look at it a little more closely. So yeah, you can see right there. It's copyright 1992. It looks like. That doesn't seem right. Maybe it is. Hold on. Let me get it back in frame. We're doing it live. There it is. Well, that's the copyright figure right there. But what you'll note about these pants here, he didn't wear those pants. He wore the pants we will see later, which are the standard with a little stripe there. You can see Riker's pants there. So it was a bit of a they didn't bother to give him new legs, even though he never wore pants like that in that uniform. So definitely a bit of a continuity error there on the Picard figure. And I believe they were able to reuse his arms and hands as well. So basically the only thing that is different in this figure is the torso. which they added the stripe and took off the collar. But the arms, legs, and head, I believe, are reuses of previous figures, which is going to be...
His arms also go extraordinarily long towards past his leg. The scale here is very curious.
Well, if you lay them out, let me see, how far do my arms go down? Yeah, they're pretty long arms.
And are your arms the same thickness as your legs?
Alas, no. Alas, no, they are not.
I mean, he really looks like he could Hulk out here, which would be fine if his head was slightly scaled up to make it look right. I have to say, he's a little too pro wrestler for me here.
He does. I'm the captain of the Enterprise, brother.
Engage.
Make it so. Yeah. All right. Well, that's Look, we have little details. So that is Picard. Let us continue across the bridge and bring forth figure number 6072, Data.
Data, I'm getting word from the holodeck that your turkeys are done.
Yes, it does look like it's a little cold. Well, and look, this was the problem with these uniforms. They were so tight and so thin that it kind of like all your business was right there.
No tank top, huh? No tank or undershirts.
No undershirts, no nothing. It was... they were uncomfortable. They were smelly. They were these were the basic design was good. The fabric was all wrong, and it was just not a fan. None of the actors were a fan. And happily as the uniforms got more forgiving, the cast was able to eat again, and I'm sure everybody was happier. So let me talk a little bit about the figure here, and you can see he has the standard pants and feet with a little pop of color there, which I enjoy. And speaking of reusing, reduce, reuse, recycle, as we have a joke on our other show, this is again the same head and legs and arms with a swapped out torso. Now you'll note on his forearm there you have the access plate to get to some of his circuitry that you'll remember from the Series 1 figure. And but on the Series 1 figure, he had a back plate, which also opened up. But because they replaced his torso, they weren't going to bother with the back plate for this one-off figure. So all they did was swap out this torso, painted it yellow, and you have your mostly assembled Data right there. They just cut the back plate opening.
Now, are there other figures? Does his original series have that little, holster thing attached to the leg, or is that like plug in?
No, it is attached, and it was part of the original series. It's a little holster for his tricorder or his phaser, and a lot of the figures, the earlier figures, had those attached to the figure. Many of them have broken off over the years. But yeah, no, he had this. He had the little holster there, and we're gonna see it again on a couple of figures. And in fact, some of these figures have it broken off, and I'll show you the hole where it used to be. But there is his box with his blue choking hazards and his shooty phaser, and you can see, they had a probably a publicity photo that they turned into a Skybox collector's card of him staring into the camera oddly. Tell me your thoughts. Any other thoughts about this here figure?
Nothing really to add. I like that in the box there, his funky hand is, but I guess they wanted to show what's on the underneath there.
What's on of his arm?
Yeah. Or is it just is his hand just twisted in the box there?
No, because it's showing that the circuitry thing opens up, but in that picture, you don't see there's a pop of color there. So actually, you know what? Head back to Toy Cam, and we'll take a look inside Data's arm. So you can see here, it's red. The circuitry is red.
Oh, cool.
Which was also a detail from the Series 1 figure.
Is there detailing, or is it just? Can you get in there a little closer?
Well, let's see.
Oh, yeah, that's cool. Sort of, almost.
Hold on. It's a little confusing when I'm...
Yep,
there we go. Yeah, so it has
cool.
a few little circuitry detail things. Oh, my goodness. While I try to navigate, because it's like
Don't
backwards.
move. That's it.
It's backwards on the screen.
Oh, cool.
And
it looks more like actual, human physiology than it does circuitry.
It looks like Data should be screaming and bleeding. But no, the only thing screaming and bleeding apparently are my cuticles. So you're welcome, Internet.
2021 sexiest cuticles of podcaster of the year goes to...
Wow. It's an honor just to be nominated. So So anyway, I think it's interesting. You know, it's funny. When I was a kid, I always was excited to see the season 1, season 2 shows when it came on syndication, because it was in the afternoons when I was a kid in Vermont. And even though those episodes from season 1 and season 2 were generally bad, because I just liked the fact that the uniforms were a little different. It felt special because it was a little bit weird. And I even at that point liked watching how the show developed. Even if I wasn't necessarily thinking as a writer, I think about that a lot now. But back then it was still just sort of I could just tell this was weird. It was a little bit different. These were my heroes in a slightly different context, and I really enjoyed that part of it. And so it's weird because, you know, obviously if you're a big Next Gen fan, you know that season 1 in particular is bad, real bad, and it took a long time for them to find their footing as a show, and when they did, it became phenomenal. But it is interesting to watch something like that artistically develop as it went along. Well, you know what we should do? We should continue artistically developing our show and move forward with our show figure today, and that is 6073 Worf from season 1.
Now, here's a figure whose body proportions match his head proportion, and I'm here to talk about beefy. Although it's interesting to compare Michael Dorn, the performer in that first season, his build, though impressive for a human, still doesn't quite match the superhero-esque nature of his character,
of his
figure.
Figure. No, and you know, Dorn is he's a tall guy. But he was never like hulked up, you know.
Right.
He Michael Dorn was never a professional wrestler build, and which really speaks to how good a performance he gave as Worf, because he gave the very imposing idea, even though again he was very tall, but he was. I wish I would give anything to be as skinny as he was.
Yeah, right.
Still is, frankly. So a couple of interesting little details here with the figure. First off, he's wearing red, right? And we're used to seeing Worf in gold. And that's because early in season 1, he was a helmsman, not the head of security. And we know that red is the command division and gold is security and engineering. And that's because we had a different head of security who we're going to get to in our next episode until he took over. So that's why he's wearing red. A couple of other things you'll notice here. That baldric looks a lot different than it does later in the series because it was actually, I believe it was the actual baldric used in the original series of the Klingons. And then the rumor and innuendo is it got stolen after season 1. I don't know if that's true, and they replaced it with a much more detailed and much more metal-feeling silver one.
Yeah, it's definitely more of a sash in that situation.
It is more of a sash in this one, but if you look at the figure, which is very clearly, almost entirely a repaint of the Series 1 figure. They didn't remodel the Baldric to match. That is just the regular Series 1 Baldric painted gold as opposed to silver. So I'm assuming that they went back to the original model, added the stripe, but didn't make any other changes. The other thing that isn't changed is his hair. You can see he's got his Pantene Pro V hair from Season 4 and Season 5, when clearly in the screenshot we have to the right here, he has a much tighter bob that he's rocking in Season 1. So obviously they didn't bother to go back and do a new head for Worf either. I think mainly because these Season 1, Season 2 figures were really for the collectors, were really for us nerds who were completist and wanted to have everything that we see on the screen represented. I don't know if kids are going to give too much of a shit about a stripe on the shoulder difference, even though obviously with Worf here he's wearing red. But, you know, if kids are going to be playing with in the sandbox, I'm not sure how much they care about those specific details. So I bet this was a lower budget sort of a figure, and I don't know if they did as large of a run with these. But there we are. You know what's cool? If we look at the box here, all of his, Worf has a whole arsenal of weaponry there, and it's all silver, which looks so much cooler than all like the weird blues and purples and greens that they do normally. I don't know why they weren't all silver, because that looks cool.
Yeah, also, let's respect his kind of rad positioning here. Like, he's taking a knee. Is this it's like halftime and he's got to think about the strategy? What's going on here?
Well, it's weird that, the figure has such a wide stance with its arms. I bet they had to adjust the legs so it would stand up. Because it's very top heavy, because he's got those huge hands and huge shoulders that but I don't know. They were certainly going like action. Worf is action. But it's the exact same sort of stance as the Series 1 figure, because it is the exact same figure, just painted. But anyway, I'm always glad to have it, because I think Worf looks a little bit badass in red, and I think the gold off the red looks really cool. Spoiler alert, when he ends up on Deep Space Nine, he goes back to Command Division, and although he never wears this uniform, he's red as opposed to gold for Deep Space Nine, which I think, personally, looks cooler. So there we are. That is our good friend Worf. I think... What do you say? Let's take a look at another guy wearing red who we're expecting to see in gold. And that is figure 6075. Let's take a look at our good friend Geordi LaForge. That's what Geordi does. He did a lot of beaming stuff on the show, but not in Season 1. Season 1, Geordi was not the head engineer. He was a bridge officer, and also ran the helm, like Worf did sometimes. And you'd see him next to Data, where Wesley ended up sitting a lot. And so again, he was here in the Command Division, and nobody got promoted faster and harder than Geordi. Geordi started out as like a lieutenant junior grade, something like. I think that's a lieutenant. Correct me on his pips. But soon he was a commander and was pretty high ranking, real fast. But in Season 1, you see him here in his red uniform. And as far as I can tell, this is a very similar figure to the rest of them. They took his Series 1 figure and did a bit of a repaint. And I don't know if they swapped out the torso with a generic red torso, or they added the stripe to his previous torso. But I assume they just made a couple of them and then attached various heads and arms to it. But anyway, I think it's cool. I think Geordi looks. It's weird to see him in red, but I like it. So talk to me, Mike.
I don't think it's weird at all. I think it looks great. Always love a Geordi. I don't really have much to add, so I'll just go ahead and transition over to his box.
Yeah. So here is also a series 2 of the next gen. We talked about sort of the box design when we saw Crusher, and he has blue choking hazards, much less warlike than Worf. Lots of spanners and bits and bobs, and who the heck knows what any of that was supposed to be. I see a tricorder for sure. But and you can see he's billed there, and Worf was as well, Lieutenant J.G. Geordi LaForge, and that's junior grade. So it is the lower level of lieutenant. So they all got promoted throughout the series. In fact, I believe Worf finally gets his commander rank in Star Trek Generations in your bridge there. So it's interesting that for season 1 of Next Gen, they didn't have a set engineer. That they didn't cast a series regular to be the engineer. And so I think, and I actually remember that in the for the pilot, they had to intentionally write a scene in engineering. Otherwise, Paramount didn't want to spend the money building the engineering set, which is weird because engineering is such a huge part of Star Trek and always has, and it's always a major set piece. But they obviously were not thinking about the engineering part as much. The warp drive, that the iconic thing. What happened in season 1? They kept swapping out a whole mess of disposable chief engineers. There was McDougal and Logan and Lynch. And, of course, the most famous was Chief Engineer Argyle, who the actor, according to rumors and innuendo, was fired when they discovered that the letters they had been getting from fans saying, oh, you should promote Argyle to be the chief engineer on the Enterprise. He's so great. We love Argyle. And when they discovered it was him sending all the letters to the show, advocating to be promoted to a series regular and become the engineer. Didn't turn out that way, but they ended up making the right decision. And that is handing the job over to Geordi LaForge, who would become the legendary engineer for 6 seasons after that.
Keith, that story you just told reminds me of a question I wanted to ask you. If I wanted to write emails to our show under a pseudonym asking me to be promoted, how would I do that?
So, but okay, that's a very good question, very good setup, very professional. What I would like to know, first off, is what would you be promoted to in the context of our show?
I don't know. I feel like I've already reached a high enough position on the pay ladder that I don't deserve due to my sheer lack of any sort of soft skills.
Would you like to show me your Star Trek toys? Should we switch places and you host the Star Trek show?
Something tells me season 2 of our show, I'll be wearing the same color uniform.
Which is whatever you were wearing when you woke up this morning. Yep. Yes, I understand that. Anyway, if you would like to email us, and I love hearing from you, and I'm getting tons of interesting emails and sending pictures of your collections, your customs, your setups, your displays. We're going to do a whole episode on customs, maybe multiple episodes on customs and displays and all of that fun stuff. You can email us at lookatmystartrektoys@gmail.com. We're there. We'll respond to you because, we're lonely. And you can also find us on Instagram, very simply, at Star Trek Toys. We're right there. And you can communicate with us there. You can tag us in pictures of your customs and displays. We'll talk about those on the episodes. Or you can just leave a comment right below. Tell me what I got wrong. I think of all the things in this entire show, what Mike enjoys most are people correcting me on various, Star Trek lore problems, but more likely just I misspell people's names. Spelling is just not something I'm attuned to. And let me tell you, Photoshop, you need a spell check.
Yeah.
If Photoshop had a spell check, that would change my life.
Well, Keith, in the future, you don't need to spell.
That's true. There's no spelling in the future, like Star Wars' rule. There's no underwear in the future. So there it is, folks. Thank you so much for watching our little Star Trek show. We look forward to chatting with you more about it, and we will be back next week with part 2 of The Next Generation, Season 1 and Season 2. Till then, it has been... Look at my Star Trek toys!